How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, today we're going to do a video breakdown. Me and Russ are going to break down a video that we just saw in Corrections 1. It's an assault on staff, and it's coming out of Hillsborough County Detention Center. So Deputy Nathan Gough was involved in a nearly 4-minute struggle with inmate Raheem Fulton. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. That's a long time, guys. During the altercation, Deputy Gough sustained significant injuries, including a broken left orbital bone and a cut to his eye. The confrontation took place in an open bay jail dormitory with other inmates watching, and the deputy was unable to call for help immediately. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office initially sought to keep the footage private, citing concerns over sensitive information, but a judge ruled it should be released to maintain transparency. The incident highlights the risk correctional officers face and the importance of safety protocols within correctional facilities. Guys, so I'm going to show you the video, and then me and Russ are going to kind of break it down from different perspectives. But it is a disturbing video because there is a delayed response, which I know right off the bat, me and Russ are going to, we have concerns with right away, just that immediate response. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Okay, so let me get Russ on real quick. What's up, Russ?
Hey, good morning, Anthony. How are you doing?
Good. Hey, Russ, you mind introducing yourself again, please?
Sure. My name is Russ Hamilton. I'm a former and retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Started my career back at San Quentin in 1989. Eventually, I retired. Then I went on to become a senior juvenile correctional officer at a new facility here in California. And I currently work for a private company where we do reentry and rehabilitation work for inmates inside a county jail where I am a case manager. I also help with caseloads of people that do it from my company for the local probation department. I'm also founder of Keepers of Chaos, where we help people people inside the profession by mentoring them, helping train them, giving them good knowledge and and just a little bit of, camaraderie. So I'm also barely awake. Anthony called me early. So that's who I am, mostly, I think.
Yeah, I think you got most of it right. Okay, so let's just get this video. Guys, we're not going to say anything at first. We're going to let the video play out. It's about 10 minutes. It's going to start from the altercation. It's going to have the altercation, and then we're going to show you also at the very end how they start to put the inmate into what we would call a violent person restraint chair or a VPRC chair, which is definitely something I figure we'll just let the video play out. It's 10 minutes. Then we'll go back and we'll discuss it. All right, so let me get it out there, and I'm going to mute our mic. And guys, there's no sound in this video, so it is what it is. So let's All right, Russ. So there's a couple of things there. Now, guys, mind you, this is not a video where we're going to pass judgment. Rather, this is just a video we're going to provide some insight, hopefully, in an effort that people will watch it and learn. But obviously, I just want to showcase the dangers of our job. I mean, that's an officer that's trying to get across a correctional objective, and immediately it may be does become resistant, starts swinging at the officer, and just shows you how fast the tides can turn. Thank God this officer did have some level of self-defense training. You could see some type of jujitsu there when he's on the floor trying to grab the inmate into an arm bar. But Russ, what's your initial thoughts on the video?
All right. So when we initially, see this video, the thing that, stands out to me is, first of all, a real big proponent against, having officers work by themselves under any conditions. And I know that all kinds of excuses get made. Oh, it's a level one. Do we have level one areas out in the street? No, we should always have people working together as partners. So that was the first thing that really jumped out at me. The second thing is if I'm going to go in and I am going to handcuff somebody, I am always going to get someone there to assist me with that. Handcuffing someone is a high risk endeavor. No matter where it is, no matter when it happens, you don't know how they're going to react. The second thing is if I had to, effect an arrest, place them in restraints, and I have to do it by myself, someone's going to have to know about it. And so I'm going to, at least call on the radio and say, hey, I'm about to, place someone in cuffs. That was what the preventative measures of this could have done from that point forward. The next part, he does, very decent in not getting himself hurt too bad by being able to, try and control that distance. Tried to get him in the guard for a little bit. The guy kept standing up. He kept pulling him back, which made it difficult for the guy to throw any blows. The difficult part there is he just has to be, glad that unlike a lot of areas, no other inmates jumped in. Because once you're down there on the ground, if you're not up and defending yourself like that, then all you can do is try and protect your C-spine and head. And that's a really bad position to be in because people can throw free shots on it. They can kick you. Good follow through. When the inmates pulled the guy back up and he was in a point that he could stand up and regain his composure, he went right back to making the arrest, got apparently some OC spray and got the guy, in a position where, I think he was blinded at that point. At that point, where staff came in and then were able to, get him down on the ground and, start controlling his limbs. They did a good job getting him into the restraints. They spent a little too long, in my opinion, having him face down with pepper spray on that floor. They should have rolled him into the recovery position even while they were waiting for that chair. I think that, it's too easy to forget about the times that we see things like positional asphyxia happen. The times we see, other types of distress that inmates get into. And so you have to be really cognizant of that. Yes, he attacked someone, bad on him. But in the end, we don't want someone coming back if this goes bad and saying, hey, how come you guys had him so long on the floor? What's your training look like? What does your training say about that? And yes, there is a point at which you do have to make sure that you do continue to have control over them. But getting them into that recovery position is essential. Best part about this was the officer managing to stand up at the end. Truly, he gets to go home tonight. He's, got bumps and bruises. Doesn't look like he probably got hospitalized or anything. So thank goodness for that. Should be a good learning tape for that facility there. But I think that the main thing that they should be focusing on, though, is what happened leading up to this, and having a partner and making sure you put things out over the airwaves when you're about to do something that's high risk.
Yeah, and guys, let me get back. So One of the things right off the bat, like 100% agree with Russ. These dorms should have more people present. It's hard when you only have one officer, and if your focus goes to one thing, everything else around you is you're not paying attention to. And in this case here, you have an inmate that was probably given an order that he chose to ignore, however passive at first. I mean, basically, he chose to sit down. So the officer wasn't in immediate threat. Wasn't in an immediate threat. The inmate didn't pose an immediate threat at this point. So, like Russ had mentioned, if I know I have an inmate that's going to be slightly resistant, I may call for a supervisor or I may call for assistance. But I may call the supervisor first, make this effort of prepared de-escalation. Because again, the inmate went to the chair. He didn't pose an immediate threat to the officer. But the officer, I'm not micromanaging the officer either or passing judgment. The officer wants to get that objective, wants to establish that level of authority. So basically he could be going over to the inmate to try to find out what's going on. Did you hear what I said? Whatever the directive is. But my greatest concern here, and I think Russ would agree, is when the inmate is sitting, and I'll show it here, it's when he decides to put his hands on the inmate without the backup. Now, again, the inmate doesn't pose an immediate threat, but if I knew the inmate was going to be resistant and he wasn't listening to my objective, whatever my correctional objective is, my directive, I probably wouldn't physically engage him just yet because the inmate doesn't pose an immediate threat. I would be asking for a supervisor or backup before I would have put my hands on this individual, because you got to assume at this point it could elevate. So I would ask for assistance. I think that's the part that's my biggest concern in this video. What you agree, Russ, or no?
Yeah, I mean that's the main thing, and let me tell you, guys, it's it's become the thing where we feel so understaffed that we feel like we have to do it all, or that we're bothering people by saying, hey, you know what, I need someone down here, even if it's only for a minute. And then we just think, oh, you know what, this is the way we've been doing it, and inmates have been largely compliant. And that's really some, bad hindsight bias to get into. What we should be doing, what we should be preaching is, best practice. The best practice is to have a backup officer there. You have your contact officer, and then you have the officer that's providing the backup. And that's the way that it should be. And, supervisors should be encouraging their staff not to take things upon themselves, biting off too big a piece and then getting themselves into a situation like that. I mean, it's wonderful to have an officer that's a go-getter and that can do a million things by themselves. But there's a point at which we have to cut that back and say, hey, wait a minute, this is going to end up being a problem somewhere down the line, not necessarily here. And so I understand how staff start to do this kind of thing and start to put themselves in these positions because we are so undermanned. But you know what? This is kind of incumbent upon, both sides here. Hey, check yourself. You know what? Check the ego and do the thing that is more safe and most safe. And I'll tell you right off the bat, I had times in my career where I could have easily and probably did make mistakes like this, where I, bit off more than I should have, and that I, probably should have, called for a little extra backup or done something. And it's, we get into the position where we are not doing the best practice possible. So let's not fall down on that. Let's praise people for saying, hey, good call, waiting for backup, good call, waiting for, a cover officer to come in while you were the one doing the contact, and other things. Just, if we're going to do all of this, I would like try and put some of these other inmates into a position of disadvantage. Hey, why don't you guys go kick rocks down the road and try and make this a little more isolated, and put that inmate into a position where, he doesn't have so much of an audience. Give him a way to back out. This is a hard one, but I think that there's just some practices that people are slipping up on a little bit.
There's a lot of things that also dropped. As you can see, the inmates start to pick up things. In one case, at one point, they actually give something back to the officer. It looks like it's the radio or something, so the officer can call the code. Now, some people, I'm going to show you something here. So when he goes down to the floor, there's a couple of things that drop. I don't know what it is that dropped. Maybe it's keys, a few things. And then you guys see an inmate that comes over here. He's a little blurred out, but he starts to pick up some of the stuff that's fallen. And then I think when they let this fight go on for a little while, you got this one inmate with the white do-rag. Let me just show you that. I believe he actually is the one that gives the radio. This guy, the white do-rag, is the one. I don't know if that's the radio or not, but he secretly kind of gives him, I think it's the radio, because then he calls for the code. He secretly gives him what he needs so he can go ahead and call for the backup. Now, I would like to think, and I could stop sharing this video, is that you always have the eyes in the sky. So basically, even if the officer is not able to call the code, there's someone watching that video at all times, like in a local control point. But it looks like that wasn't the case, because it said in the little thing I read that the officer was unable to call for assistance. Okay, well, where was the backup that could? When you have an open dorm with, a dormitory type setting, and you have an officer on the floor, only one, there needs to be, hopefully you could have the other on the floor, but if you don't have that, which to me is the biggest concern, where is the officer in the sky in a safe distance watching everything? So just in case the officer can't get to the radio, it's not, we got his back. We're calling it in immediately. I saw that. And then I also saw the inmates, so real quick, the inmates that not failed to respond as if they're officers, but the inmates, there's a lot of reasons why the inmates may not want to initially respond. I know, not that I would be dependent on them to respond anyway, but there are times where if there is an officer being assaulted, the inmates will step up and get in the middle of it and break them up. But obviously that doesn't happen all the time, nor do you want to be dependent on it. And I think in scenarios when people are watching the video and they're like, well, the inmates could have got involved and stopped. Yeah, that you don't depend on that. And there's a lot of reasons why. One is, it may not be socially acceptable amongst the inmate population to do that when there's an altercation between an officer and an inmate. So that's why I think a lot of people are hesitant. There are a lot of people walking around and it looks like they want to do something, but I think their greater concern is, should I do something? Because if I do, is there going to be a repercussion? So again, I don't know who the inmate is that's assaulting the officer, but maybe he's a gang member. We don't know. And then the other thing that was a bit of a concern in regards to why they may not jump up and go at them, go to protect the officer immediately, is some may not want to get caught up in it, because they know when the team comes in, anybody wearing orange, if they're not where they need to be, they're getting taken out. That's just how we roll, to make sure that the officer is safe. We just come rolling in and basically isolate the concern. So a lot of inmates are probably thinking, well, there's a response coming automatically, because that's how it should roll, right? We have an officer getting into a fight. Maybe we don't have to help because the team's going to come in. The team's going to come in, but then the team doesn't. So now you got this guy rolling on the floor for a few minutes, and then you get some of the inmates that are like, is this team ever going to come? Fuck it. And then they start to get involved. So I think a lot of the reasons why some of the inmates may not automatically get involved is because they expect that when an officer is being assaulted, you're going to get an immediate response. That's why they're kind of moving around. But when there's no response, I think the inmates decide, screw this, and we're going to separate them. Is that play out a little bit like that, Russ?
I've seen enough of these videos that, that's certainly the way it can be. I will tell you from my experience in California, no inmate would get involved. That would be 10 times worse than being a snitch in California. So I can't recall a time where I've ever seen one time where an inmate got involved, but it wasn't on a true staff assault. It was just a staff that had lost consciousness. And he did the right thing. But in California, I think it's a little different animal. Certainly in prisons, it probably is. I'm guessing that this is a jail. But different areas around the country, might view that whole thing differently. And I can only speak from it, of what the inmates in California are like.
Russ, if you watch it, you could see, I think in my mind here, there are some people, you see how they're scratching their head and stuff like that. They're wondering what's happening. And I think what's going on here is that they expect, I think the inmates expect that there's going to be an immediate response. So they don't jump in. I mean, again, guys, I'm not saying we're dependent on inmates to jump in. That's not what I'm saying. But just looking at the picture here, we're not depending on inmates jumping in, but there are some that I believe want to jump in, want to do something, but then they're thinking, well, maybe the team's going to come in any minute. And then when the fight prolongs and it goes longer than it should, because look, you got this guy running in. Okay, maybe the officer's got control. So I'm going to step back now. Looks like the officer's got control. And then what happens is the officer doesn't got control, because you see the one inmate just now, he runs in because I think he's going to try to help the officer. Then he sees that the officer puts the inmate in the arm bar, and he's like, okay, well, maybe the officer's got control, so I can step back. Watch. The moment the officer falls on his back, this inmate tries to run in because he doesn't want the guy to get pounded on the face. So there's an inmate that tries to run in to help the officer. Watch, you'll see. And then the officer gets him in the arm bar, and he's like, okay, maybe I don't need to help him. Maybe the officer has some control. So now you got the rest of the inmates, they're kind of waiting to see what happens. There's no response. This is what to me is a little upsetting. So they're going back and forth. Then you got, now the inmates are a little bit more scattered, but you'll see some more inmates trying to come up, try to get involved. And then eventually what winds up happening is you can also have some that are lookouts, but I think this was rather impulsive. I don't think this was planned. I think the inmate didn't want to do something. So the officer tried to give him a direction. The inmate refused, and it was just impulsive. I don't think it was planned to get this person. I think this is just the inmate was pissed off in the moment. Now look, you got these guys. Hey, the officers come in. No. So now you got this guy trying to tell this guy peacefully, come on, you made your point. You're done. Let's get this done. Because I think the greater fear is when the inmate's on top of the officer. It puts the officer in some level of disadvantage. And I think there are some inmates that see that. Maybe some don't want to be an accomplice to anything. Like, shit, we're all in here right now. If you do something to this officer, we're all going to be held responsible. So he's just holding him down. Right now, it doesn't look that he's aggressive. He's just holding him down, maybe to get a breather. And then eventually what's going to wind up happening is they start to go at it again. And then finally, there are going to be some inmates that wind up actually taking the inmate off him and then giving the officer back the radio so he can call the code. Because at this point here, I think the inmates know that these officers, the backup isn't coming. So now the inmates decide, you know what? Because watch when they start teeing off again. Now it's like, okay, you made your point, man. So now what they do is they start to get involved now. It's like, all right, man, we're done with this. Come on, guys, let's just do this, because And what they do is they're thinking about it, and then they wind up. It's when he starts teeing off, when he looks like he has the advantage, the inmates start to kind of think like, what are we going to do? Especially that one guy with the white do-rag. The one guy with the white do-rag is actually the one I think that kicks the radio back to the officer so the officer can call the code. But watch, this is when they're like, okay, you know what? It is what it is. You got a guy on the floor. We're done. Take him off. And then, since there's no look, they're checking on the officer. And then this guy in the white do-rag, look, he gives him back the radio. Here, take the radio. Call that in. And now this guy's cheering because he got his oil. That's the other thing about corrections guys. When they have a fight like this and you got all the inmates there, this is a moment of achievement for him. That's why he's clapping at the end, because he did it, man. He took out the officer. And I think in this case here, a lot of the inmates here rather not have had that happen. Some, not all. And then he goes back, and I got to give the officer props. This guy is still a threat to him. And he goes back and he re-engages, sprays them. And now you have the team coming. And look, he almost puts his knees on his neck, and then he corrects himself. Boom. And puts it on his shoulder blade. So that's a good move. He came right in, put it on his neck to hold him down. Then he caught himself and he put it across his shoulder. But Russ, there's a lot there, right?
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing, unwinds, good on him, standing up, making sure that he gets some of that chemical agent out there. He's still, you know, this inmate is still unsearched. Right? We don't know at this point that he does or does not have a weapon. He's still, you know, a threat to those around him. He gets right back in and, you know, manages to get that call out there. So he's got some better backup. So, you know, win-win. You know, he was standing at the end, and like I say, that's about as good as an outcome as you can hope for.
Yeah, and that officer was very professional in his re-engagement. I mean, after what just happened, he sprays him and he gets right on to try to, you know, restrain him. I thought that was a very professional response when he went to re-engage him. It wasn't highly emotional. He went in, sprayed him, and then went ahead and he saw the team coming in, so he knew he, you know, he had the backing, and then he went in and they made their effort to restrain him. And I do like, I got to admit, how they start to tag each other out, you know, when they're in the process of restraining him. Hey, Russ, this was a good video. I mean, I think it was interesting. I'm very upset, obviously, with the response, not having another officer on the floor. Maybe someone else that's watching things that can call it in. And maybe if they have someone there, was the person distracted? But the first thing I would do is, if I had to investigate this matter, is if there was some oversight, like some officer in an area where the unit's on camera and you could watch the officer. I want to know what you were doing at this time, you know, because I'm assuming there was also noise that you could have heard as well if you're directly over the dorm. But not having another officer there is the bigger concern. And then for people that are watching this video, I know the person was resisting passively, however, but the problem is I would be very careful when you're trying to now physically move them. I would truly, once the inmate doesn't comply with your directive, I would call for the supervisor, because at any moment, a passive inmate could easily become an active aggressor. Hey, Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, you know, this is just a good typical example of what the brave men and women in corrections face out there every day. You know, there's many times where we end up in these situations. Sometimes we've made better of them. Sometimes we've gotten the worse end. Obviously, everyone, if you're out there working in this, just make sure that you stay safe, think smart, act decisively. And, you know, I love you all, and I just want everyone to go home safe.
Yes, and as I said, guys, I think it was a good video. Some learning tips here. No judgment here. Just also showcases for the audience that doesn't work in corrections the dangers of our job. How at one moment it could switch. As always, guys, shows here. If you haven't, please like, subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe. Hey, Russ, that was a good video.